Oh, I don't know why, but sometimes we just need escape. Now Jerry's got his boots on and he's dragging us out and far away. It's a fever.
Kia ora, kia ora, kia ora. Welcome to another episode of Tararua Fever. Ki te whakarongo mai koe o te Tararua Fever, the podcast that is anything and everything about tramping in the Tararua Ranges. Yes, you know the catchphrase now. This is episode 9, Shelter from the Storm. Ko Jerry Tokawingoa. I am your host Jerry, an imposter expert who just loves to yarn about tramping in the Tararua Ranges. To kick things off now, the rough sort of agenda for today, you're probably quite used to it if you're a regular listener now that I've been doing a reflection, and recently it's by way of a Tararua 101. So we'll get on with that today. Of course, it's going to be about huts. This is Shelter from the Storm. And then we'll be joined by a couple of guests from the Victoria University Tramping Club of Wellington. And they're going to speak about a recent hut bagging mission they did. Plus, we just love to get to know people from the tramping clubs and know a bit more about what they do and who they are and stuff like that. So we'll get into that with them. And then, as always, for Walk and Talk, I'm joined by a pretty cool guest this week about a pretty cool topic on huts to do with quite a lot of the history of the Tararua Ranges, but I don't want to give too much away because I often do. And then lastly, we need to announce the winner of the quiz question giveaway competition that I started running in the last episode. So we'll be drawing a name out of the hat for the end there. Right, so today's reflection is on huts. Our shelter from the storm. They're often our refuge from the harsh environment out there. From storms, they're places to keep us safe and warm and contribute to the wonderful experiences of the bush. But there are a few things to think about when we go to them. So for this segment, I'm going to cover off some of my own personal preferences as well as some of the more practical aspects. First of all, I wanted to start off with travel times to and between huts. Now, in the Tararua Ranges, these can be quite variable, and often they are put times are noted on signs on the track when you are walking. But sometimes the variability on the signs for the times is not always super accurate in the maps as well. There's one example that I can think of, and it's I think it's by Twin Peaks, past the... I'm going to look this up real quick. Sorry. Yeah, it's Twin Peaks, just past Waipehu, and I think it has some crazy distance where it says something like 3 hours to the next hut, and it's not. It's terrible, and you can even see where some people have scratched in their own sort of take on what the distance should be, or the time, and for that matter. There's other variables when you're walking to and between huts that you need to take into account as well. And that can be also, your own walking speed or your party's own walking speeds. And that can be variable based on different experiences and abilities. But it also may be variable based on the conditions that you're in. The weather, what's the terrain doing? All sorts of stuff like that. So I think, my advice there is just do your best to research before you go. As usual, I'll give the Facebook forum for the Tararua Ranges a bit of a shout out because there's also fantastic information to be gained from just being on those threads and just having a bit of a peruse every now and then, because you do get a huge amount of information from people doing tramping and posting about them. The second thing that I wanted to say is about huts is that there's two basic types really, and that's bookable and serviced huts. Bookable and serviced huts are slightly different. The bookable ones are generally on the Holdsworth circuit, so that's Pow Hut, Jumbo Hut and Ari Whakatu. But then there's also Totara Flats as well, which are bookable. And from what I gather, and go do your own research, is that you do have to book these huts. They're very popular huts. I think it was episode 3 or 4 where I talked to Brett Gillies. He's the hut warden at Totara Flats. He's fantastic in terms of providing information around why they're bookable. And that's because, while he's been a hut warden, he's, had, I think he said something like 50 to 70 people at Totara Flats in one night, one time. And, as the hut warden, he's having to try and find space in every nook and cranny for people. I mean, maybe that's quite an extreme example there, but these huts are bookable for a reason because these trips are really, really popular. So make sure you're booking the huts. And if you do book a hut, make sure that you do go and do it, because I think one thing that is really difficult for them is people who book and then don't end up going on the tramp, because that's actually taking up a bed for someone else who would be otherwise doing it. Now, service huts in general are normally about $20 a ticket, I think. You can get your tickets from any local dock office or places, other tramping shops like Outdoor Bivouac. I always love giving a shout out to those guys, particularly in the Wellington store. They're always really helpful. Go get a service hut ticket from them. Actually, I've just had a look online, and it looks like the bookable huts are $25. Power Hut, Jumbo, Ari Whakatu, and Totoro Flats are all $25 per night, it looks like. But then a standard hut is $5 a ticket, and that's normally the blue ticket, as opposed to the service hut ones, which are green. And again, you can get them from any tramping or dock office, tramping shop, sorry. I always used to get a backcountry hut pass, and if you're an FMC member through any sort of tramping club or mountaineering club, you get it must be a 10% discount, which is completely worth it. And so that meant that I never really had to go buy hut passes, but I don't have one anymore because I haven't really been going out as much as I used to, and particularly if I come to the Tararua Ranges, I'll just go get a standard one from Outdoor Biv. $5, easy. Every now and then I've been caught out for one night longer than you want to be, or you haven't quite got your hut ticket. So in that regard, I've always gone and retrospectively bought a hut pass, and I've just chucked it out after that, just so that I'm making sure that I pay my own way. The third point that I wanted to talk about for this Tararua 101 are the different huts and the different sizes, and therefore the different amounts of people that they can sleep. So something like Power Hut, it's obviously quite big. It's one of those bookable huts. I think that must sleep around 30 to 40. Someone else would tell me differently, I'm sure, maybe even 50. Tutawai, that must be about 20 people. They'll normally say on the dock websites how many a dock hut will sleep, but then you can get much smaller huts such as Pen Creek or Midwahine, and those are normally like 6 bunkers or maybe 10 bunkers. Cow Creek's another one. Actually, that's a really good example. Kent and I have been to Cow Creek once. We got to Cow Creek maybe just after lunch, and it started filling up pretty quick. People were turning up, and it actually ended up that there were more people than that could fit the hut, and someone had bought a tent, but then there was a whole bunch of latecomers, and obviously they didn't bring a tent. They were banking on the hut being free. It wasn't. So then there was a little bit of jiggery pokery, a bit of horse trading about who could sleep in what sort of shelter. So just be mindful when you are going to a hut. I mean, in terms of how many it sleeps, the amount of people that you're going with, the amount of time it might take, when you're leaving, all these sort of variables will make a difference when you get to a hut and whether there's free beds or not. So even if the plan is to stay at a particular hut, I never want to completely be relying on that. I always bring a tent. I've always got that as a fallback option, and so I could probably just recommend that. And finally, as I mentioned it before, I think hut etiquette. I don't really want to touch on this, but I think there are a few things to keep in mind. And like I said, rule number 1, don't be a dork or a dick if you want to make it colourful. And that's just general appropriate behaviour of being friendly. You don't always have to engage with everyone, but just don't be a weirdo or a creep as well and make people feel uncomfortable. Because you're out in the bush, people are vulnerable, people might be scared, people might be, a bit more hyper aware of these sorts of things than they would otherwise. So I just think it's important to make people feel safe when you're out there. Cleaning up after yourself is just, a no-brainer. Again, I don't think I should have to say this, but no matter when you go to a hut, you can always see a bit of evidence of rubbish around. It's just one of the externalities. So I always try to be very, very vigilant about cleaning up after myself. And that's not only just taking all the rubbish out with me, but making sure I have a sweep around where I've, been using the utilities. There's the odd time when, you see it all the time actually. People might bring a bottle of wine in if they're not going too far, and that gets finished over the course of an evening with a few people. And some people might feel compelled to think, oh, it'd be fantastic if I left the wine bottle here because someone can use it as a candle holder. Well, that is likely just going to sit next to the other 20 bottles of wine, empty bottles of wine for, candle holders. So like, I just don't think that sort of mentality actually adds value. I'm inclined to just take out whatever I bring in and be quite militant on that. If you're using firewood, try to replace it, because those standard huts don't always get all the love, especially compared to the bookable huts, or the service huts for that matter. But yeah, I won't go on too much. I think that's probably a good Tararua 101 reflection for shelters from the storm. Our huts, our saviours sometimes, because even if you are quite adept to using a tent, sometimes it's just nice to have a warm fire next to you inside a shelter that's free from the breeze and all that sort of stuff. So yeah. Okay, stay tuned, as up next we'll have an interview with two people from the Victoria University Tramping Club of Wellington. Welcome back, and for the next part of the show, I'm really pleased to introduce Rewa and Max from the Te Hiranga Waka Victoria University of Wellington Tramping Club. Ngā mihi kia korua to you both. Welcome to the show. How are you today?
Kia ora. Thank you so much for having us along. Really excited to be here.
Yeah, really looking forward to having a chat.
I regret to inform you that I spent 5 years at Victoria up until 2019. It was some of the best years of my life. I loved it completely, but I never engaged with the Tramping Club.
Well, I have to say that was a bit of a missed opportunity. We're a pretty great club on campus, definitely the best one out there.
Yeah.
We're actually the second oldest tramping club in Aotearoa. We were established in 1921. We do tramping, but we also do a lot more than tramping. We run some pretty novel events like some of the other cool university tramping clubs around the Motu as well. We run things like bush ball, bush rave, master chef competitions in the bush as well as lots of training programs like snowcraft, rockcraft, climbing, that kind of thing. And we also run a pretty famous freshers trip at the start of every year, which has about 120 plus participants, all camping in ivvies, which is pretty iconic. And we also do other things like weeknight walks, conservation, pack rafting. So we go a little bit beyond just tramping, and we're kind of the main outdoors club on campus.
Wow, you guys are busy.
Definitely. We have trips going, at least a couple of trips going every week. So some shorter trips, some longer trips, and lots of things over the break as well.
When I was studying, I was so busy. I didn't get out that much. So I'm really impressed at the amount of activities that you guys do. I guess this is a Tararua Fever podcast, so it's mostly based around the Tararua Ranges. But do you get a bit wider across the Motu than that?
Yeah, we do. We run sort of trips to the Orongorongas, further afield to Ruahines, up to Ruapehu, and then sort of in the winter breaks, we do midwinter trips down to the South Island, kind of poking our nose around there and sort of having a little explore and seeing what's down there as well.
Yeah.
There's sort of stuff further afield. I know over summer, I think one trip went to the furthest north hut in New Zealand.
Oh, incredible.
Yeah.
For me, Tararua Ranges was always the back doorstep for Wellington. Obviously, the Orongoronga Range as well was a really cool place to get into. Nothing against the Orongoronga Range, but I got a bit bored of it quickly.
Yeah, I feel it.
But a great place to get started. And so it's awesome that you guys go further than the Tararua Ranges, but it's right there, isn't it?
Yeah, we love it. We run trips there all the time. It's kind of our playground, where we kind of grow into tramping, I guess, and then head further afield a little bit. But yeah, we absolutely love the Tararua's. Favorite ranges for sure.
Fantastic.
Yeah, it's so close to uni too. Like today, I was sitting up at Kelburn campus studying away, and kind of look up the Hutt Valley, and you can just kind of see the main range sort of stretched out on a clear day, and it's like really just puts into perspective how close it is and how lucky we are.
When you can see that silhouette of the Southern Crossing, looking out from Kelburn campus, I totally know that one. Very, very cool. And of course, actually, the Orongoronga Range as you're heading looking east, as well, especially if it's got snow and beautiful, beautiful views. So yeah,
for sure.
Do I dare ask about the rave and the ball and all that? Like, do you guys go far in for a big bush doof?
Well, secret location actually, but
Uh-huh.
I can give away a few details. Bush Ball is a couple of hours walk in. We camp out there in this mysterious location. We actually take in generators, smoke machines, um, rave lights. It's the whole real deal. And then Bush Rave is a much bigger event, which is a little bit less far to walk for some of our members who are much more into day walks instead of overnighters. But yeah, both awesome events.
Couple of months ago, I was on the Tararua Facebook forum, as I usually do, and someone had posted just an FYI that there'd be a mass hut bagging mission that particular weekend, and I thought, wow, that's very like how does the group go about that? And so I'll hand it over to you guys to explain.
Yeah, so that was actually me that put that Facebook post up, and it was actually quite funny. I'm not sure if you had a read of those comments, but we had quite a mixed reaction of people going, "Oh wow, this is awesome." But there's a few sort of old timers that aren't necessarily trampers, but are more hunters that kind of came on and said, "During the roar, really?" Like, I hope
I,
you
s-
got
I
caught.
did note all of that. I followed it with a wee chuckle.
Yeah,
My favorite bit
yeah.
was when another person chimed in and said, "Well, all the best for the Southern Crossing race this weekend as well."
Yeah, I actually was on that trip that did part of the Southern Crossing, so I had that, and then the constant worry that there are hunters out there to get us, because we got called silly, reckless, inconsiderable, keen, and also someone I think commented, make sure no one's wearing antlers as well, which is
Ah,
kind of its reaction on Facebook.
it's yeah, vitriol from Facebook's not always great, but I was hoping I assumed that you guys were going to be responsible and
Oh,
yeah.
for sure. Yeah, we kind of talked about it and like, we figured, we're going along all the marked tracks. We're just going to huts, we're not bush bashing off to random places. So, the Tararua Ranges are there for everyone to share. So
It's a big
yeah.
forest park. Yep. Yep.
Yeah, I don't think anyone had any issues. We had a great time and
Did you guys achieve your hut bagging mission of getting to, I don't know, every hut in the Tararua?
actually, so we sort of classified it as only the official dock huts that are legit
Okay.
on the website. So that kind of cuts down from about 50 odd down to 46, I think we worked out. And we did it over 5 days, so starting on the Friday evening to Tuesday. And we did actually manage to get to all of them as well. So that was,
Ah,
yeah, it was
fantastic.
a group of us in the committee, and then sort of some of the more experienced trappers that have been on the committee for the last couple of years as well, kind of got together one day in late May and sort of sat down with like four maps of the Tararuas all taped together and kind of sat
Hmm.
there brainstorming for an afternoon at someone's flat, what routes we could do, and like what kind of different trips we could run. And I think at the end of it, we ended up with about 10 different trips, ranging from sort of your beginner overnight trips to through to like some big 5 day trips. And this big spider web of sort of markers and all that on laminated topo mats on the floor of someone's flat, trying to work out
Yeah,
how we could all make it work in 5 days.
classic. Yeah.
Yeah, it was good fun to sort of figure that out and to learn all the different routes and like try and find ways that we can get to huts that not many people do.
Some huts are quite easy to get to or just only a few hours away. Other huts, Tarn Ridge, for example, you've got to get to Tarn Ridge from either one side or the other. So did you have quite a diversity of range of people with skills and stuff like that who could do different huts and different routes?
Yeah, we did actually, because the beauty of the tramping club is we've got sort of people that have never tramped before through to like tramping gurus that, they can tramp for a week and they're like, they love it and they'll just keep going and don't need breaks and stuff. So it was a great sort of event as in it let people find a trip that was suited to them. Yeah, so we kind of found the leaders that would be able to, that wanted to lead these trips and then kind of move people into groups where we thought they'd want to be and like sort of based on their experience level and kind of what they're
Mhm.
keen to go and bag and sort of tick off and sort of the areas they want to go and see in the Tararuas. Yeah, so I was quite happy with how that worked and how it all kind of came together.
I've got a poster on the wall of my lounge with every hut, the Tararua Ranges, and I think it's more than there's about 70 on them. So some of them might not be official dock huts.
Yeah.
I think I've been to about 80% now, maybe 75, maybe 80% is slightly too generous. So I'm not classically a hut bagger myself. Like, I mean, yeah, look, I'll go and tag a bag a hut that's, I haven't done before, which is always nice. But I don't set out on one specific mission. So I do like this though, and it got me thinking, what are some of the official dock huts? So, excuse me, I've got my work laptop right here. Sorry, my long password. I had a small list of huts that I had questioned whether they'd be on your list or not.
We'd love to hear them.
Yeah.
We debate it frequently in the club ourselves. So
Okay, yeah, great. This is a great game because there are some, my mates and I call them the lost huts, the Tararua Ranges, and I think you can call, Snowy Hut up the Waitararu Forks would be one. I think Joe Gibbs Memorial up the Taranekau River would be one. So I think we can rule those ones out. But
Mhm.
was thinking about little ones like Island Forks up the eastern Waitawaiwai River.
I think we didn't include Island Forks, but we
No.
did send people there anyway.
Oh, okay.
I believe so. There was an experienced group on that trip who got a bit bored and they were like, well, let's go bag an unofficial hut then. So we didn't include that in the 46, but we did actually get a few unofficial huts as well.
Yeah, I know Anga Hut and Otaki Hut, I think it was. The sort of two unofficial ones got bagged.
That's the
Um,
mid Otaki Otaki 1A.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I think one of the guys on the trip kind of got a little bit bored, so decided to go for a little side
Yeah,
mission
I
out.
think
Try
that's the
and
one I'm thinking of. I think it was
yeah,
Mid Ortaki, not
Ah,
Island.
uh,
nice. Yeah.
Yeah.
I've
yeah,
taken both of those.
yeah. Oh, nice. Yeah, and it was kind of awesome to sort of come back and hear that they'd managed to do more than sort of what was originally tasked, and go out and sort of find these cool like little huts that not many people go to, and kind of bag them as well, and kind of get our total up. And like we came back and we're like, we've actually bagged more huts than we originally planned to. So that was actually
Okay.
quite cool.
Cool.
Yeah.
Do you count a bib as a hut? So McGregor bib, for example.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
And it,
So we said huts, sort of including sort of the main bivvies, official bivvies as well.
Nice.
Yeah.
McGregor Big Biv was actually one of the two that we missed when we ran this trip last year. So we didn't make it to Kakik or McGregor Biv because of bad weather and really high winds on the top. So those were just the two we missed last year, but yeah, really glad we got them this year.
Nice. Nice. The most isolated hut, now I could be wrong again, I'm no expert, but I'm pretty sure it's Karkik, eh?
Yes. And our
Yeah.
club has quite a tradition of running. I don't know if you've heard of a car cake picnic before.
No, not heard.
A car cake picnic is kind of what it sounds like. You walk in, you have a picnic, and then you walk out the other side. So you can do it from either side of the range. I personally have not completed a picnic yet, but it's definitely one of the next things to tick off really soon. So yeah.
I'll have to put that on my hit list. Yeah.
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 Yeah. It's a pretty epic one. I've heard some awesome tales from the people that have done it before.
Yeah, fantastic, fantastic. So, is there anywhere that you haven't been then?
I actually have never done the Maungahuka Alkaparangi circuit before. I feel like I feel almost a little embarrassing because I have been to lots of places.
Yeah.
Um, just never had a good 4 days where I've always spent my long periods in other parts of the ranges. So that's definitely my next trip. It's not the picnic. Um,
Summer's coming.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So yeah, that's definitely the next spot for me, I think.
Nice.
Yeah, I'd say there's actually quite a few trips that I want to run in the Tararuas. So and yeah, compared to a lot of other members in the club, especially on committee, I've only been tramping for oh 4 or 5 years now. So I started sort of late into high school
Yeah.
through school. So yeah, I kind of just been getting more and more into it, and just need to find more time to get out there and sort of go and have a nosy around some of the other areas and stuff.
I think that's the thing is that I think like I said I kind of I did do tramping during uni but not as much just because I was so busy, and I think that's the great thing is that you can pick it up and put it down as much as you like. Yeah, and the thing I like about the Tararua Range is I kind of want to leave space there to explore as well, um, because it's one of my favorite places in the world.
Yeah, absolutely. I almost feel sad the closer I get to kind of ticking off all the huts, and I'm like, oh, okay, we'll have to start bagging valleys or bagging something different now.
I'll have to start tramping in the South Island.
Oh no.
Oh, look, thank you so much for your time, both. It's been a pleasure having you on the show, and yeah, all the best for the rest of the trips that you're doing this year. I definitely hope to see you out and about. I'm currently planning a trip into the Tararua Ranges for the end of August. So yeah, if I ever do see any of you guys out there, please do say come say kia ora. Um,
Yeah. Thank you so much for
cheers.
having us on.
Yeah, thanks for
We've
having us.
enjoyed listening to all of your episodes, so I'm stoked to give VUWTC a feature.
fantastic. My pleasure, guys.
Cheers.
Ka kite.
Bye, Kite.
Okay, thank you again to Rewa and Max. That was a really insightful chat around their tramping club and hut bagging for the masses, I guess. It's definitely time for a break. Go get your scrogging, go get your chocolate or your lollies or whatever you need. Get those laces untied, take a seat, find a route. Maybe get your mat out because it's a bit wet. Whatever you need to do. We'll have a quick break, and then after that we'll be back with Walk and Talk with Ron Pynenburg about huts of the Tararua Ranges and huts in general.
Oh, we've been walking miles and now we'll take a break. And Jerry's got his boots up, so we'll sit a while. Don't you go away.
Welcome back to Walk and Talk, where I have a very special guest today who knows a lot about the history and architecture of huts in the Tararua Ranges. So here with me now is Ron Pynenburg. Kia ora, Ron. Piki mai kakamai. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Jeremy. Great to be here and have this chat with you.
Yeah, fantastic. Ron, you and I got in touch a wee while ago. I know of you through my mum and dad and a few other family friends. I was wondering, do you want to give a little bit of a quick background about yourself before we get into this?
Well, in terms of the tramping side of things, it was 1976 when I joined up with the Hutt Valleys. And actually, it was the Hutt Valleys that led me into things, the huts and the architecture and things like that, in terms of the replacement of powered hut in those days. And it got me thinking about what the history of that hut was. And because Ian Powell was one of the early members of the club, why we were replacing the hut, what had happened to the old one, why was it there, all that sort of stuff. And as I was doing my final year at university and I needed to write a thesis, I decided that the Huts of the Towers would be a fantastic architectural opportunity.
Right.
Took a bit of convincing of my tutors, but I got them to agree to it and away I went.
What was that called?
Huts of the Mount Hector Track.
Right. When we spoke over the phone, you sent me a copy of that. And I've been sort of trying to digest that over the last 6 weeks or so. It's a fantastic read. It's a fantastic read.
Thank you.
Are you able to give us a bit of a summary of what your thesis is about?
So the Mount Hector Track ran from the Wairarapa, Greytown, across the southern Tararuas to Otaki. Like that's the Mount Hector Track. I actually started looking at the huts of the Tararuas. And it took me about 3 months to realise that there was far too much in that, and I needed to significantly cut back on what I wanted to do. And the Mount Hector Track became a very convenient and coherent whole to deal with, and I thought it was a very nice story in terms of those early days from when people were thinking quite differently. It was before tramping existed. And so the genesis of the Mount Hector Track had nothing to do with tramping, and yet it ended up morphing into the Southern Crossing, which is a slightly different route, which is one of the classic tramps. And so that whole evolution of the use of the Tararuas is, I found, a fascinating story to dive into, and it was a real joy.
When you first started telling me about your thesis, the Huts of the Hector Track, and we were talking on the phone, And I was like, you're just talking about the Southern Crossing. But in reading your thesis, there's actually quite a bit of nuance in there.
They are quite different in that the Mount Hector track started off as really connecting the Wairarapa to the Kapiti coast. It started off as basically a coach route and a stock route. What happened, jumping ahead, was with the beginnings of the Tararua Tramping Club in 1919 and it turning into a recreational thing. Nobody wanted to go from Wellington to the Wairarapa. To get started, they wanted to start from Wellington. And so you then led to the start of Kaitoke and the Marchant Ridge, and you lost half the Mount Hector track, the leg that goes from Alpha out to the Wairarapa. That changed into the Southern Crossing, being the leg from Alpha down to Kaitoke through the Marchant.
Yep.
So you lost effectively half the track then, and then also if you want to go back to the coach and stock route, a lot of that used the old Renata Ridge and the Waitauru. Originally, parts of the Judd Ridge and all of that weren't part of it. So while it seems to be similar, there are quite a few differences.
It struck me in reading it that it took a few iterations for them to get the Mount Hector track right for what they wanted at the time. Because I did note that it actually, skirted off down the Renata Ridge and out, maybe, was it down the Waitaruru Forks to Otaki Forks?
Yes. But it's all those sorts of things. One of the early iterations was to go up the Neil Ridge or the Neil Winchcombe Ridge.
Yes, that's right.
Now, that was in the days before anybody had walked it. And for those trampers, myself included, who have done that ridge, when you read the thesis and you look at what they thought they could do, and then you walk the ground and see what they would have had to deal with, it was never going to happen.
No, I thought that was ambitious at the time when I was reading it, but I couldn't believe that they had considered it. It was...
I think it's a good indication of the vision and ambition of people of that time.
Yeah.
The early development, almost a heroic sort of vision of what was possible, and nobody could see a problem. All they needed was money and time, and it would happen. And it was only once they got started they realised it wasn't going to, and they had to go into Plan B.
One of the things that you've just sort of been mentioning, and I noted quite early in reading your thesis, is that there's a lot of familiar names.
Yes.
And to mention a few, W.H. Field, the MP for Otaki, and who helped establish the Otaki Committee.
That's right.
The first crossing was completed by B.C. Aston, G. Atkinson, and F. Penn.
Yes.
And there's another few names that were there of H.E. Girdlestone, Mr. Carkeek, and F.W. Vossler. And then even, and you go into quite a bit of detail about Joe Gibbs.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, again, these are names of peaks that I see all the time, and have often wondered, how did these peaks get named? Who are these people? And there you go.
Joe Gibbs is probably known by quite a few people in terms of his role in the Tararua Tramping Club and also his role as a builder of huts. But the interesting thing that I found was that there was a guy called Workman who was the builder of the first round of huts for the track committees.
Right.
And it was nice to realise that there had been another hut builder before Joe Gibbs who was also quite instrumental in making it happen, because a lot of the people in the huts committees had vision and ambition. They might have been politically connected, or they were good at getting some money together, but they didn't have the skills.
Yeah.
They needed somebody who could cut tracks. They needed somebody who was a bushman who could build huts. So Workman did the early Taranekau hut. He actually built the first Alpha hut.
Yep.
Joe Gibbs in 1923, I think it was, he extended it. I was quite pleased to be able to, first of all, find out about Workman, and secondly, bring him into the history to recognise his contribution.
Yeah, fantastic.
From the very early days in terms of ending up with where we have ended up.
I can't think off the top of my head if there's a peak or a pass or a river or a stream, anything that named after Workman off the top of my head.
Not that I know of.
Yeah. I saw a picture in your thesis of the Hector dog box.
Yes.
And was that like, I don't know if Mr. Workman was one of the people that built the Hector dog box, but
no, that was after his time.
Right. How many huts were there on the Hector track altogether? And they obviously don't remain anymore. These are huts that have come and gone.
In order from the Greytown side, there was Woolswarry
Yep.
on the Greytown side. That was sort of at the road end, and that replaced an earlier existing farmer's hut, if you like, called Bassett's Warry. You went over Reeves and dropped into the Taranekau, and there was a top Taranekau hut, which was Malthoid and pole frame, which was built by workmen.
Right.
You then went up over Bull Mound, and Alpha was there.
Yep.
And
Still exists.
that still exists, but that is not the original.
Of course.
So that was built by workmen. It was extended by Joe Gibb. And then in the 50s, with the water catchment, it all got demolished and they shifted the hut to a new hut. They shifted the site to a workman's camp, I think it was. And then that has been replaced by the latest iteration of Alpha, which has also been extended.
Yeah.
You wandered around the dress circle, and then between Hector and Field, I think it was, in the saddle, there was the Hector dog box, which was an emergency shelter built after a couple of deaths. Now, Kime Hut was named after one of the boys that died, but actually he was the second death in the same year. The first death was a guy called Freeman.
Yeah.
And there's a whole lot of stories around the naming and those events, those trips. Then you came down from the Hector dog box. You then had Kime Hut, which was built in 1930, and that was actually the first ski field.
Yes,
in the Tararua.
yes, there is a bit in that, yeah.
I had a delightful chat with Wally Neal, who was alive at the time I did my thesis, about a lot of that. He went up there and took photos of the construction of Kime Hut by Joe Gibb, Jack Fisk, and Ralph Nolan, I think it was. Wonderful to have that series of photos and the stories about how they built that. Pit sawn timber framing, pack horses to carry the gear up, living over a summer with snow and all of that sort of stuff on the camp.
Yeah.
You came from Kime, came down to Field Hut, which is the only hut left of the originals. That was built in 1924, again a Joe Gibb construction. And then you headed down towards Otaki Forks, and there's a little hut halfway down called Te Moi Moi, which was built by the Otaki Committee, and that was the only hut they built. A little slab hut on the side of the track, which didn't last very long.
Right.
That was it till you got out to the road end.
Yep.
The Parawai hut and all of that. That was nothing to do with those early days and the original concept of the Mount Hector Track.
Yeah, that's a lot of history right there. And I'll maybe pull out, I was going to pull this out towards the end, but I think I'll pull it out now. It's a quote from your preface of your thesis. And I found this quite meaningful. It's slightly split, but you say here that all huts have a limited lifespan because of the environment they're subjected to. We all know how harsh the Tararua Ranges can be, so that's quite intuitive, I think. Then you go on to say, but the history of the huts reflect quite to the extent the modern history of the Tararuas. They explain the aspirations and dreams of pioneers, the development of the Tararuas, and why the Tararuas have become what they are today. And for me, when I go in there, and I appreciate it so much, it's my tūranga waiwai, it's my happy place. That sort of quote is quite meaningful. It's those people that paved the way before us that allow us to even do what we're doing. There's one more here that I really like, that the huts are the most obvious link to history. When you go on to say that, there are 4 huts, and indeed the link to the early days is indeed quite tenuous. I think there's a lot in there.
It is, Field Hut's the last one. They've just had their 100th.
Yeah.
And it's not been unkindly to all the people who've looked after Field over the last century, but Field Hut, in my mind, is really like Granddad's axe. It's had 2 new heads and 3 new handles, but it's still Granddad's old axe.
Yeah.
Field Hut has gone through a significant amount of rebuilding, repairs and maintenance and all of that. It'd be interesting to see sort of how much of Joe Gibbs' work is still in the hut, but it's still Field Hut. And it's a very important piece of New Zealand history. There's a photo I've got. You look out from the front of the hut. Over that bank is where Joe Gibb dug a saw pit and cut the framing for it, and where he cut some framing for Kime Hut.
Yeah.
So the people today who go down to Mitre 10 and pick up some 4x2 or 100x50 in the 90x45 in the modern language and go off and do some work, they need to sort of think about cutting down a tree, dragging it with a horse onto a pit, getting a long-handled saw, have a guy on top and a guy on the bottom and hand cut your framing. And that's how they built the huts. In those days, a bushman cut his framing,
Yeah.
and the stuff that got brought in was the stuff that was manufactured. So your windows, your cladding, corrugated iron, tongue and groove flooring, but everything else you got out of the bush. So for Kime and for Field Hut, it was basically totara, thrown totara, which was dried out and stuff like that. And, all pit-sawn framing and great stuff.
So, Ron, tell me about the tourist track idea. We could have had a local version of the Milford track.
Yeah, that's right. Over a period of 15 years, there was a lot of work done, with the result being significant government funding, a track across the Tararuas, across from the Wairarapa to Otaki, a series of huts, including some that were two-roomed, one for men, one for women, for mixed parties, the way they looked at things those days. There was a man who was prepared to be a guide. There was a bridge across the Taranekau, and there was also a booklet describing the trip itself. But, of course, it didn't come to pass in the end. In 1909, there was a Greytown surveyor, Drummond, who had also been involved in the earlier triangulations of the Tararuas. He enlisted the help of a local guy, Mark Maxton, and also Willie Field, who was the MP for Otaki, to help him in the formation of a tourist track to get from Greytown to Otaki. There was a trip up to Mount Hector by Department of Tourist and Health Resort staff, and you'll see as we go through how important it was for guys like Field to be involved with the political influence and obtaining of funds to make things happen. That was a favourable report which stated that the trip could be added to the existing tourist routes. I think the Milford Track was already in existence at that time.
Okay.
And things happened pretty quickly. March 1910, the Greytown Committee paid somebody £10 for, and those who know the Tararuas will think about this, a 4-foot track, 1.2 metre in the new measure, to be cut to the top of Mount Reeves from the start down by the river on the Greytown side. And that would be the start of a track to Mount Hector via the Neil Ridge. In August, they formed a committee in Greytown, and one of its aims was to consider the furthering of the Mount Hector tourist track. And they had an idea of a 10-foot by 20-foot hut on Mount Reeves and 8 by 10-foot huts on Cone and Mount Hector. 8-foot by 10-foot is 2.4 metres by 3 metres.
Right.
Not a big hut.
No.
The Greytown Committee would be responsible for its side from Hector down to the Greytown, and there'd be an Otaki Committee which was being formed by Fields, and that would look from Otaki to Mount Hector itself. There were representations made by Willie Field and also Buchanan, who was the MP for the Wairarapa, and they got £100 put on the estimates from the Department of Lands for track work. There was also local money available. In October, they started work on the track past Mount Reeves. And for those of us who've been along the Neil Ridge, these guys also found that the bush was a bit too thick and the country a bit rugged for their proposed track.
I was going to say it's quite a way to go to get onto the Hector track.
Yes, the ambitions of people. So what they did is they rerouted the track down into the Taranekau River, and then the aim was that they would cut the track over Bull Mound and to Mount Alpha, and then via the dress circle to Hector. And what's one of the tracks that, I've done the sort of Bull Mound and all of that, and it has have a lot of other people, but it really started way back then.
Yeah.
For £100. Workmen and 2 labourers, they formed a track over Bull Mound, up onto Mount Alpha. They put a campsite at the bush edge, and that was all done by late February 1912. And on the 30th to the 31st of March 1912, these names will be familiar. Willie Field, Frank Penn, B.C. Aston, and a guy called Atkinson completed the first Trampers Crossing.
Yeah, wow.
Spending one night at the Mount Alpha campsite. So, from 1909, 1912, pretty quick. They'd also changed their ideas on the huts they needed. So now the Greytown Committee wanted the Otaki Committee to build a hut on tabletop. They would go 50-50 on the cost of a hut on Mount Hector, and they would build their own hut in the Taranekau. So more representations to the government, more money available. £50 for hut work, £200 for track work. This is all by the end of 1913.
Mm-hmm.
World War I started, and of course that meant that not much work got done because basically the fit young guys were required somewhere else.
I can imagine money would have been a bit more scarce for that sort of thing.
Yes, that also created problems in terms of money being required elsewhere and priorities and all of that. However, on the Greytown side, workmen, he was available to them as a contractor. And so he was actually able to do a lot of work. So he was able to keep going. Elsewhere, it was required for volunteers and they just weren't available. So workmen took on a contract, improved the track to Mount Alpha to the extent that February 2015, a party was able to travel up to the summit of Mount Alpha on horses. It wasn't a tramping track, it was suitable for horse traffic.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah, wow.
There was an idea that tourists could ride their way across the Tararuas.
Okay.
Okay, so this tourism business was taken relatively seriously. During Easter 1915, workmen built a hut on Mount Alpha. He cut timber out of the beech forest. Iron cladding and joinery was carried in on horseback from the Wairarapa. And he built a 10 by 12 foot hut with an earthen floor and 5 bunks in it. This was noted by a guy called Girdleston, another Tararua name.
Yep.
He was a surveyor for the government, and he went over the track, drew a map, recorded all of this, and it actually appeared in government reports. And of course, he was killed in the First World War,
right?
And his name is now on a peak in the Tararuas.
Yeah.
There was workmen then extended and poled the track through to Mount Hector across the tops. So his Taranaka, he had a campsite in the Taranaka as well, which was used by people for campsite. He had £50. There was £50 available in the tourist department, and by mid-April 1917, workmen had also constructed a 12-person, 2-room pole and Malthoid hut in the Taranaka.
Yeah, wow.
So we're now getting to the end of World War I. The Otaki Committee was rejuvenated by Willie Field, and they undertook to build the hut on tabletop. They had no manpower. There wasn't money forthcoming from the government. Not much happened. They got themselves out of the farmland into the bush on the ridge, and by a little water hole, they built a little slab hut, which was later called Te Moi Moi.
Yeah.
I think that means sunrise. I think the dream.
Okay.
Anyway, that was about as far as they got. In 1919, Fred Vossler wrote to the committees informing them that he was thinking of forming a Tararua Club in Wellington, which would assist the committees in promoting, developing, popularising the Mount Hector tourist track. He was hoping that the committee would not view this as competitive, but if they did, he wouldn't pursue the idea.
Right.
The committees had a meeting in May, a conference about track development, and they basically wrote back and said they welcomed the idea. Be interested to think what would have happened if they objected to it. Anyway, as history tells us, in July 1919, Fred Vossler and Willie Field formed the Tararua Tramping Club.
Yeah, cool.
Now, the idea of it also was that the Otaki Committee would look after work on the ground on the Otaki side. Greytown would look after the work on the ground on the Greytown side, and the TTCs, being Wellington-based, they would basically look after the political stuff and the meeting with the politicians and all of that sort of stuff. So, a nice division of labour. They had a meeting between the TTCs and the clubs to look at what they would do, because Field and others had made representations to government and got £500 made available. So
quite a substantial amount.
As in those days, you could do a lot of work for £500 back in the day. So what they proposed was that there would be a hut on tabletop, a hut between Field Peak and Mount Hector. They would extend the Alpha hut, and they'd put a bosun chair or a suspension bridge across the Taranaka. Right. Because the Taranaka is the only wet crossing, and if you bridge the Taranaka, you can basically cross in all weathers as long as you can deal with the tops.
Yes, I've actually spoken about that sort of small danger of if you come down the Omega track and the Taranaka's in a bit of flood, then you're a bit stuck trying to get to Tutuwai or cone huts.
Exactly. Yeah. So again, with tourists in mind, they wanted to make a safe crossing
Right.
with accommodation, safe travel, good tracks.
Yeah.
So an engineer from the Public Works Department went over the track in Easter 1920. He basically agreed with their proposals, and he said, but it's going to cost you more. You should have £940 available.
Wow.
So
Money was flying at that point, Ron.
it was. A lot of people thought that this had the potential to be one of the great tourist tracks.
Yeah.
And as a measure of popularity, I mean, this is Easter 1920. That Easter weekend, 49 people slept at Taranekau in the hut.
Oh, wow.
There were 31 sleeping at Alpha, that 5-bunk hut. And there were 14 of them made the crossing with Harding, the public works engineer.
Right.
So it wasn't like there was just a few individuals wandering around. It was
That sounds like rush hour in the Tararua Ranges at that point.
popular.
Yeah.
So they got underway with the work. The first job was improving the track from the Forks up to Hector, followed by the Mount Hector hut. And the university students out there will probably smile at this. Public Works Department was unable to find contractors prepared to do the track work. So they got some Victoria University College students, and over the summer of 2021, these students had a tent camp up on Tabletop, and they formed a track through the bush up onto the tops, with poles marking the route all the way across the tussock tops to Mount Hector.
Right.
That sounds like they would have had a very interesting time with that, given weather and conditions and camping up there and all of that sort of stuff.
Obviously, the Tararua weather didn't put them off. Those students returned to Victoria University College and formed the Tramping Club in 1921, which was the second tramping club formed in New Zealand. Still going today, still going strong. Public Works then drew up a plan for a hut on Mount Hector, and again, I've seen the plans. Angle iron, prefabricated, able to be carried up and built on site. Things started to go a bit pear-shaped because different departments were providing different funds. The committees had their own funds as well, and there was a bit of confusion as to who was paying for what.
Right.
Public Works were expecting Greytown to provide £100. They didn't see it as their job because they were worried about the Greytown side. Money never came forward, things stopped.
Sure.
So the government didn't have any money for the Mount Hector track. They were expecting the money to come from Greytown. So the Tararuas prefabricated a hut in Wellington, railed it up to Otaki, and with the Otaki committee, took it up, and in September 2022, they erected a little 6-foot by 8-foot hut in the saddle between Field and Mount Hector. It never got an official name, but everybody basically called it the Mount Hector Dock
That
Box.
was yeah. I was going to ask about that. And at that point in time, Ron, I think you probably alluded to it here, is that when they were starting to realise that this track and the severity of the weather and the environment and all that, there's a bit more to it than just being able to dawdle across the Mount Hector track from side to side.
I didn't come across much comment like that. I got my hands on the committee minutes.
Right.
I found them in the Alexander Turnbull Library.
Right.
And so there was fantastic information of what was going on. I think the sense I got, and I'm remembering what I was reading in about 1980, they had this vision.
Yeah.
They were, I think, quite comfortable with the concept that it would work. It was all about providing the facilities to enable it to happen.
Yeah.
The tramping trip was quite a different thing. The TTCs, they were doing it for different reasons. And when you read the reports on those things, I think people were learning about the weather and the conditions.
Right.
And I think that understanding came slowly but surely over time. Tramping as a pursuit in itself was a new thing, and I think people were looking at doing it for themselves as opposed to paying money and doing it as a tourist.
Yeah, right.
So I think at that time, I'm sure they all thought that this could all coexist and they didn't see a problem. It was really a case of getting it done and then enjoying it. In 1923, a suspension bridge was built across the Taranekau.
You still see the remnants of that today? Am I correct?
No, that was a lot further up.
Oh, okay.
Sort of think about where the Omega track comes down and across and back up onto Reeves.
Yeah.
It was up there.
Oh, okay. Because the other one's down by block 16, am I correct?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that bridge was built, and actually you now are getting pretty close to the whole of the track.
Yeah.
But the problem was that the committees were basically fading. The concept of a tourist track was fading away as well, and tramping was taking over. By 1930, the two committees were basically not in existence anymore.
Okay.
What also happened is you had a shortage of able-bodied men after World War One. You basically had to pay to get things done.
Right.
The TTC was Wellington-based. It was strong. It was tramping-focused. It had the ear of the government through Willie Field and people like that. So there was just a natural shift. The other thing was, which again most people today probably don't realise, in those days you worked on Saturday mornings. It was only in 1936 that Saturday morning work stopped, and you could actually do something on Friday night.
Yeah.
So to get out of Wellington, it was hard work. The pressure from the Wellington trampers was they wanted to get into the Tararuas, but to get to Greytown was a major effort.
Yeah.
Getting through the Hutt Valley to Pakatahi and going up the Marchant was a lot easier.
Yeah.
So in 21, tracks were cut up the Marchant, huts were built, little canvas pole type things were built at Dobson's Mistake, and
Right.
of course later on we had the Dobson's hut there.
So it's about that point that it became the Southern Crossing, maybe with no clear.
Yeah, probably wasn't known as that,
Yeah.
but the effective route started in
Yeah.
those days, and the Greytown leg to Alpha sort of faded away.
Right.
That was the beginning of the end. The committees disappeared, essentially. The TTCs took over, and the remaining work on the Mount Hector track was carried out by the Tararua Tramping Club and Joe Gibbs. He was a bushman.
Yeah.
He was a hut builder.
Yeah.
In 1923, he extended Alpha Hut to Sleep 30. In 1924, he built Field Hut to Sleep 40. In 1929, the Hector Dog Box blew away, which led to the 1930 building of Kyme.
Right.
In 1931, the Taraneko Bridge was washed away, and that effectively cut the access from Greytown. You had the natural tramping happening from Wellington up the Marchant, and so we ended up with the Southern Crossing, but we got so close to there being a tourist track that started in Greytown and ended up in Otaki.
There's another aspect to your work as an architect that's quite influential here, I think. You were an architect after you had your own firm.
Yes.
And you're a passionate tramper, and then Cave Creek disaster happened.
So obviously with Cave Creek, Doc realised it had lots to deal with in terms of its structures.
Yeah.
At that time, through the Hutt Valley Tramping Club, I was also a member of the Tararua Aorangi Huts Committee, which was with the introduction of hut fees under the user pays ideology of the day.
Yeah.
And I've got my own thoughts about that one.
Right.
The clubs and Doc got together in the Wellington Conservancy to look at how best to spend I think it was like $50,000 per annum income from hut fees on the 40 huts in the Tararua. So back of envelope says that there's no way that money is going to pay for repairs and maintenance and capital replacement.
Yeah.
So how are you going to deal with it? So the Huts Committee was formed. I was chair of the Huts Committee, sort of knew a lot of the guys in Doc and all of that. Cave Creek happened, I think 93, 95, something like that.
Yeah.
But one day I got a phone call from one of the guys in Doc, because the guys in the Conservancy, they also knew people in head office, or they'd shifted and all of that, and basically said, well, you're an architect, you're a tramper, you're in the Huts Committee, you know huts, we'd like to look at our huts and see whether there are any problems there. So that led into a baseline inspection program, which led into funding from the Helen Clark government at the end of the 90s, 2000. Sandra Lee was the Minister of Conservation. I think it was $200 million over 10 years.
Right.
But also as part of all of that, we started looking into a hut manual so that there could be capture of the institutional knowledge of huts. I mean, if you want to go back to the 1960s, the Forest Service had engineers in the SF-70, which is this traditional six-bunk hut.
Right.
It's a brilliant little design.
Is that what I might see at Midwahine or
Yes.
Pen Creek or, yeah?
Yep.
Yeah.
So the old six bunker, that was designed, and I think there's about 400 of them out there.
Yeah.
Well, there was at one point.
Yeah.
So in some ways it was going back to the future to say, well, actually, instead of everybody making it up each time from scratch, why don't we have a standard design? So 2 bunk, 4 bunk, 6, 10, 12 bunk,
Yeah.
plug and play huts. So we started work on that manual for Doc. There was a baseline inspection of the existing network that led into the funding being available, which then led into a series of years of building new huts.
So this was like the
Based on-
cookie cutter design, basically.
Yeah. So for those smaller huts, my attitude was it's shelter from the storm.
Yep.
To paraphrase a great book that got written.
Of course.
It's a permanent tent, 4 walls and a roof. There's not a lot that needs to happen there. Why reinvent the wheel every time you do it?
Absolutely.
And then we could evolve the hut manual over time, taking on board any lessons that could be learned. And the idea was that, it would become sort of the guideline. And then for the larger huts, which obviously are a bit of a bigger footprint in the landscape, they would be more bespoke design, not only for the numbers, but also for the location and stuff.
Yeah.
So what you might do for, say, Powell Hut could be quite different to what you do for, say, Angelus Hut.
Yeah. Very interesting, Ron. You've played a bit of a role there in sort of maybe the history of the huts in the Tararua Ranges, but also across New Zealand, I guess.
Yes, I think 2000 was our first lot of huts.
Right.
And I don't think we quite got to 100.
Okay.
But I think, there's 90-something huts out there that have been built with my and the firm's involvement.
Yep.
Following the hut manual.
Right. I was under the impression, maybe I had some wrong information here, but maybe it might be good for you to clarify, that I thought that maybe you had designed Waitawaiwai and maybe one of the iterations of Powell Hut and a few others, but was that just through the hut manual?
Waitawaiwai was pre-hut manual.
Yeah.
That was 1990 or 91.
Right.
So if you like, that was the first time I got to design a hut.
Have you carved your initials in one of the beams, or?
No. But we had a lot of fun going in there with the club and sort of clearing the site. And there's lots of stories around the building of Waitawaiwai and going in to help with the construction of it. That was quite an interesting thing for me, going then through the huts committee and then with the hut manual, sort of not only being involved in obviously tramping and using huts, but also as an architect thinking about the design, what I've done at Waitawaiwai, how that led into other things. But also a significant difference between, let's say, the Tararua attitude or expectation to some of the places elsewhere. The Tararua concept was always the platform bunks, and it was quite a surprise to me to visit other parts of the country and see little individual bunks in
Oh, wow.
a lot of the National Park Service and stuff like that.
Right.
And so in different parts of the country there were different expectations as to what would be provided, and that was another benefit of the hut manual. A hut's a hut.
Of course.
It's in the bush. So it was really saying, look, instead of having the discussions about a bespoke design everywhere, depending on what the locals are used to, let's just make it easy in terms of design, facilities available, cost, get it under control, and away we go.
It sounds like it wasn't just the standardization of the huts, but everything that went into them as well.
I mean, there was standard detailing, standard construction.
Yeah.
The idea was that people didn't get used to what they got, how to build it, and it would make things a lot more efficient. And I think that did prove to be the case with those smaller huts. Totra Flats, Powell Hut, there's a whole lot of them. Elder,
Right.
there's another one.
I love Elder.
Yeah.
Elder's a great hut.
So that's pretty much a typical hut manual 4-bunker.
Right. Right.
Yeah, Mangahoka.
Of course.
Another hut manual. Oh, Kime.
Yep.
The new Kime.
Yep.
So that's the third Kime hut. There's another history in the Tararuas which would be quite interesting to sort of follow through some of the huts which are onto hut number 3 or version number 4.
Absolutely.
And somebody could write a lot about the rationale and the thinking behind each one and why it did what it did.
Don't know if we've got anyone from Victoria University Tramping Club who's doing architecture listening at the moment.
Well, I was successful with my thesis. An architectural student could easily sort of pick up a pen and, well, these days they don't have pens, they have keyboards.
Yep.
And there's a lot more to be investigated and a lot of history actually to put together in the Tararuas from that architectural hut perspective.
Well, maybe that's a good note to finish on, Ron. You're obviously retired, so you've got the rest of your day to get on with. And thank you so much for your time and imparting your knowledge with us today. It's been fantastic.
Enjoyed the chat, Jeremy.
Yeah.
Alrighty, thank you again to Ron Pynenburg from the Hutt Valley Tramping Club for all his knowledge about the history, about huts in general. I think it's a fascinating chat, and I know I've probably focused a lot on the history and that significance of people who have come before us. But I think it's a really sound foundation to talk about and to understand when we are going to the bush, because things happened before us that paved the way for us to be able to do what we did today. So I find that really interesting. Righty ho. Okay, so you will have heard there's this giveaway competition. So I want to get on with it without further ado. The giveaway quiz question was name me the 2 highest huts at altitude in the Tararua Ranges. Now I've had quite a bit of interest in this, and I think I want to apologise first and foremost, because before I get into the answer and the draw and stuff, I do want to say that my reference point that I'm adjudicating this is those doc websites that have these huts on them have a link to the actual maps themselves. So this is the doc maps, which I'm pretty sure is the same as the New Zealand topo maps and stuff like that. But that's my point of reference. So if you've gone to a different map that says something slightly different, my sincere apologies. I should have said that at the start when I was announcing this. Maybe this is all learning for me too. And hopefully it won't be the last one. So I hope that no one feels too begrudged. But I'm pretty sure that most people who emailed in did have the right answers anyway. So the highest hut at altitude, and this is also, the caveat of why I included bivs into this quiz question, because I think, if we're talking about shelters from the storm, bivs is still provide that function. So that's exactly why I did it. At 1,500 meters and 1,505 meters, sits a ret at the northern point of the 2 main ranges. And so that is, by my adjudication, is the highest shelter from the storm in the Tararua Ranges. But the highest hut is over on the other side of those main ranges, and I'm just going there with my map right now. And it sits between Hut Mound at 1440 and Field Peak at 1483. It's Kime Hut. Go figure. Kime Hut sits between 1440 at Hut Mound and Field Peak, which is about 1483. So to me, Kime Hut looks maybe it's about 1450. The highest point just next to Tarn Ridge is 1393, and then just as before you reach Girdlestone, there's another high point there marked on the map at 1435, so that might not be too far off. Someone did mention in their correspondence to me a nod to Tarn Ridge, which might be a close second to Kime. So yeah. So without further ado, I'll get into the draw now. I've Googled a website that will just spit me out a random name. It's basically a generator, and it's got the wheel of names here. So I've just listed all the contestants. I can assure you that privacy considerations have been taken into account here, and this website will not save any names. So I've listed them into this wheel of names website, and it's about to spit one out. So drum roll, please. And the winner is Mike Dazel. Thank you, Mike. Congratulations. There you go. You can hear the wheel of names is congratulating you, mate. So a massive congratulations to Mike Dazel. Sorry if I pronounced your name, if I've butchered it there, Mike. I'll be in touch via email to get your address. I have got the physical copy of the $50 outdoor bivouac voucher, but also I'll email you the electronic version so that there's no duplication there. And congratulations again to you, Mike, and thanks to everyone who sent in their what they thought the answer was. It's fantastic to get that sort of engagement for something like this. I really want to do one again, so maybe in the next couple of eps I'll think of another one. Of course, if you've ever got any thoughts, questions, comments, ideas, please get in touch with us at tararua.fever. tararua.fever@gmail.com. Yes, that's it. But you can also get in touch with us on our new Facebook page, which has kind of got some stuff on it. I've put a few bits and pieces up. We had a lovely message come in from a guy the other day. And thanks, Jeremy. Like that, I appreciated that so much. It just warmed my heart to just to hear from you and how much you appreciate the podcast. I do work on my Te Reo Māori. I'm not actually very good, but I just try and insert it whenever I can. So thanks very much, man. That was really cool. When you are listening or about to go into an episode, make sure you hit the follow or hit the bell that notifies you when an episode drops, and that'll come up. I think that applies to Spotify and Apple. I'm not sure about the others, sorry, but they may have something similar. Just a like and subscribe, as the phrase goes. I did mention it on the last episode as well that I want to start opening up the podcast for other people's experience as well. So if you think you do have a cool trip that you've done in the past that was maybe particularly gnarly or significant in different ways, then honestly, I'd be happy for you to come along and share your experience on this podcast. I will try fit anyone in the best way I can. There's some themes that we're trying to stick with here, so if it works well with a particular theme, definitely get you on. But look, this is all about just learning and hearing other people's experiences and stuff like that. I'm going to run out of stories at some stage, so why not open it up? I think it'll be a really cool thing to do. Thank you so much for listening as always. Really appreciate all the love that we get through the email address and, well, now the Facebook page. Maybe an Instagram soon. Look, if you're listening and you've been following this podcast, then you're obviously happy to put up with my nonsense and the nonsense of some of my friends. I hope that the content on here is always informative as well as being a bit silly. Look, we don't want to take ourselves too seriously. We'll see on the next episode. For a nice wee surprise, it's going to be a slightly different format to the norm. I know I say this sometimes, but I never want to give too much away because I'm classic for doing it. But if you go back and listen to episode 4, Ellen and I went for a bit of a tramp and basically made a podcast out of it. It might be something along those lines. Anyway, look, if you are going out this weekend or this week, or be safe, take the appropriate gear, all my normal messages as always, and just go have a great time because, I've got the fever. I can't wait to get in there myself, and so should everyone else. All right, mate wa.
I'm in the tower ruins, I've walked across the tops. I'm looking for a hut where I can finally stop. The night is closing in on me, I need a place that's warm, so I can finally get some shelter from the storm. I didn't check the journey time, feeling half past dead. Luckily for me, I see a place right up ahead. I ducked my head in through the door, tired and forlorn. Finally, I got some shelter from the storm.
Who's playing guitar?
Yeah, we're trying to sleep in here, man.
I think I'll finish off my wine. Man, I need a drink. I think I'll leave the bottle too for someone's candlestick.
Don't do that.
I'll leave it with the rest of them when I leave in the morn.
Great.
When I finally leave this shelter from the storm.
Yeah, that attitude doesn't have value, man.
Just to go to sleep.
Can he hear us?
I'm looking around in the dark, trying to find a bed.
Shush.
I forgot to book one.
Did you bring a tent?
It did not occur to me.
Well, you aren't well informed.
Hey, I just wanna have some shelter from the storm.
Why are you joining in with this song?
It just seemed like the only way to get through to him.
Shelter from the storm.
It's not even stormy outside, so don't know why he keeps... Oh, come on, man.